Big three.
Number 3.
You know, I met with pharmaceutical companies yesterday and had a very frank discussion with them about ways to limit TV commercials. When you advertise a pharmaceutical product, it's the government that is most likely going to pay for that product.
Isn't that interesting? Maha movement goes from program to power as RFK's team adds Casey Means and talks about how America is about to get healthy again, but they got a plan to do it as these real-life friends take effect, hopefully positively, in your life.
Number 2.
With this deal, the UK joins the United States in affirming that reciprocity and fairness is an essential and vital principle of international trade.
Yep, one is done. Trump brings home a trade deal with UK as a massive meeting with China looms, and there's some movement on this. It's going to be taking place in Switzerland. We look at the numbers, the deals, and the markets.
Number 1.
I guess they like you. They miss you.
Yeah.
I miss being here.
Yeah.
I'm actually interviewing for a job as a cameraman.
Now he's calling for investigations and claiming the pardons are void and vacant.
Oh, he's vacant.
Why is he so fixated on you and blaming you for everything?
I beat him.
Well, there you go. The Biden rehab tour causing a relapse. Yes, the BBC and The View appearances have one thing in common. Joe can't communicate and wrestles with reality. And in the end, his legacy and his party will pay the price. Matthew Continetti joins us now. Matthew, what do you think the last 2 days of interviews have done for the Democrats and Joe Biden?
Not much, Brian. Thank you for having me. It's been a lesson in why the Democrats lost so spectacularly in 2024. To have Joe Biden on these big public stages, first with the BBC, then yesterday with The View, was a reminder of just how bad a president he was. He will not accept responsibility for the border. He did not mention inflation at all, and he's avoided all of the foreign policy issues that caused this explosion, among other things, of anti-Semitism in the United States. It's something to watch. These Democrats self-immolate.
Right. And if you are a Democrat and you want to see your party turn the page, which every party does after their candidate loses, this is a nightmare for you. But the other thing, I remember Bob Dole, when he lost to Clinton, he got blown out. He goes on David Letterman. He's charming. And people thought, wow, I wish we saw more of that personality. I remember John McCain. Back to work in the Senate, okay? It's over. Back to work. I understand it. And, he went out of his way not to criticize President Obama and famously invited him to speak at his funeral. And then when you have, for example, you have George W. Bush, don't hear a word from him after. He's out there criticizing, still in denial. The one thing I thought was interesting, they said, what would you have done? He goes, I would have beat him because last time I got 7 million more votes than he got winning this time. Shouldn't there be some clarification there?
Yeah, you would think there'd be a whole lot of clarification on some of the things that Biden said. He's not acting like earlier presidents. I mean, even President Trump, after he left the White House in 2021, he really didn't come back on the public stage until CPAC in that spring. And then it was his broader vision for the country, part of his eventual comeback. Biden is on the stage very early. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, he gave that paid speech in Chicago. He has spoken to students from one of his advisors at Harvard. Now he gives these 2 interviews. The question is why? And I think I'm very sympathetic to the theory of the journalist Mark Halperin, who says maybe Biden Inc. is in danger of running out of cash. And so they need the big guy to be out there in public in order to show that the family is still relevant.
Yeah, here he is, cut 13.
Biden Inc. has collapsed. All those Biden grandkids had a lavish lifestyle, which they very much liked. Hunter made hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. Joe, as a former president, is not in a position to get the same kind of paid speeches, corporate boards, book deal. Biden Inc. needs a source of revenue. And Hunter does, even though he was pardoned and he's not going to prison, Hunter does not have great earning capacity.
So that was just not an apolitical look. He says he's got a memoir done. Somebody said that he's got a book deal, him and Jill, for $30 million. That's just got to be a payoff because no one's going to buy that book, just like no one's going to finance that library if he indeed wants one.
Right. Right. And, we've also learned a couple months ago from the New York Times that Hunter Biden's artwork suddenly has collapsed in price and isn't selling, right? So you need to have other revenue streams. Biden mentioned the book in the interview with The View. He expressed kind of surprise and frustration that apparently his publisher wants it done in a year to get it out probably sometime in the fall of 2026. But of course, the question is, who's going to write it? The auto pen? Right. I mean, even the story we get from the Biden family is not going to reflect reality. And I think that's another reason he may be out there. He's trying to kind of pre-butt this deluge of books that is just starting to come out, showing how his cognitive abilities declined dramatically over the course of his presidency.
I mean, you got 4 books now that say that. He said, well, no one served with us that wrote it. Yeah, right. But they're the sources of the books, including your best friend, Ron Klain. So I want to talk about another thing. We know this. We have one deal done with the UK, and it's interesting. It's going to help the ag group, and they have some protections for Britain when it comes to Rolls Royces and their cars. I'll get into details on that. But what's also interesting is what happened over the last 24 hours. It looks as though, according to Bloomberg and now the president's Truth Social account, he's going into sending the Treasury Secretary and his trade leader. He's going to tell them they could come off the 145% tariff level if, of course, both want to do that. He says maybe 80 sounds like something. And evidently, Bloomberg had 65% tariff level in terms of maybe loosening up some rare earth that we need. Your thoughts about his approach to these meetings in Switzerland?
Well, it's classic Trump approach. He's talking what he would like to see, 80%, but he also said in that Truth Post, Brian, that it's up to Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, who will be making the negotiations. And I think the key is reciprocity, because it's clear we're getting these reports. The Chinese are hurting just as much, if probably a lot more than the United States is from the trade war. Remember, their economy is export dependent. Ours is not. Ours is not dependent on imports. So we have more leverage over them. What I'm looking at is these reports also that the Chinese actually want us to lift some of our export controls on these high-tech AI-related semiconductor chips. I don't know if the Trump administration is going to be willing to go there.
I don't think so.
This early. And so we'll see what comes out of these discussions. But I do have confidence that Secretary Bessent, the Trump team, they're not going to be intimidated by China in the same way, say, as Biden's national security advisor Jake Sullivan was when they first met with the Chinese back in 2021.
Remember, they got blistered in Alaska. They basically got yelled at, which is so humiliating for the country. That's how I felt at the time. So I love what you did. You took a step back after the president's commencement address in Alabama, and you thought about his career and what he said. And you wrote a column called The Wisdom of Donald Trump. And one day when he's out of the political fray, and it's going to be 3 years, and people could take a deep breath, and whoever becomes president, whatever party's in power is in power, people realize what an extraordinary career this guy's had. And his visualization and manifestation has been something that you can really learn from. What did you get from his speech, and what do you think those Alabama students got that day?
Well, they loved it. Watching the speech, you could tell that the audience was just so excited to have President Trump there. And President Trump loved it, too, as he remarked several times after the commencement. So that's what drew my attention to the speech, Brian. And what I was shocked was, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, the media completely missed the story. They were focusing on, of course, the more political heavy messages in the Trump's commencement. And they were there, and that's how Donald Trump communicates. What they left out was these 10 pieces of advice that Donald Trump gave the graduates based on his own life and career. Things like think positive, think big, start out strong when you're young because success can come early, never give up, don't lose your momentum. I found these lessons very valuable, one, but two, very revealing of how Donald Trump has lived his life. He doesn't slow down, he doesn't stop, and he used examples and explanations drawn from people he had encountered, famous players like Gary Player or famous builders like William Levitt of the Levittowns. He mentioned his father, which is always fascinating when he talks about Fred Trump. And so what you got a picture of from this commencement is actually how Donald Trump thinks about himself. And I, for one, am interested in that. And I think about 50% of the country is, if not more. But our media is completely checked out. All they want to do is criticize, attack, and put the worst face of Donald Trump forward.
I mean, a couple of things. He also said, don't be a victim. If things are going to go wrong, don't be a victim. It's a mindset, too. He brought up the Commodore Hotel, his first successful story. And I remember him, Eric, telling a story about him being 24 years old. And they say, Eric, take over this project. And he'd been working every summer, taking over the project. And what he did is basically give him autonomy to figure it out. Start dealing with the unions, dealing with builders, dealing with problems. And then he goes, I'll be here to help you out. And he says, I learned by doing, but by my dad giving me the confidence to do it, I realized that's what his dad did to him. Threw him into the fray. It builds up confidence.
Well, think about his cabinet, right? I mean, this Trump 2 team is much younger than Trump 1. And you consider that his vice president's 40 years old, right? You had his secretary,
press secretary, 27.
His press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, still in her 20s. Of course, Stephen Miller, one of the key aides, he's also in his 40s, early 40s, if not late 30s. Pete Hegseth, much younger than your normal defense secretary. So that same ethic that he talked about at the University of Alabama about start out young, get your success done early, that's visible in this administration. I think it's one reason why this administration is more effective in the first 100 days, say, than even the successful first term.
And you also brought up, too, and contrasted with Barack Obama. Obama says progress is achieved through bottom-up community action within institution. For Trump, progress is the result of renegade individuals willing to break things. And man, is Trump willing to break things? Yes. And then he goes back and fixes it. You know, he got the world's attention, and little by little, he's going to put it back together. And people are nervous, and there's going to be some shelves that are bare, and the ports are going to be not as busy as they should be. But in the end, if these deals start rebalancing trade in America and set a new foundation, that's why I think, Matt, the worst thing for this president is 100 days. There's nothing about the president's agenda that's going to yield any results in 100 days. So, of course, the polls are going to be underwater.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you need a long framework to judge the success. What's fascinating about that be an outsider is what Trump told these students. That's usually not what you hear from commencement speakers, right? He was saying, be an outsider, take risks, don't work within the system. And you can see how it's helped him in his life, right? I mean, he was the Trump coming from the outer boroughs into Manhattan when he got his start. He was an outsider in Manhattan society. Then he had his second successful career in entertainment, right? With The Apprentice. Here is Donald Trump coming from the business world, an outsider to entertainment. He becomes a big television star. And then, of course, he is the ultimate political outsider, starting out in 2015, being laughed off as a potential nominee for the Republican Party, and then not only winning the Republican nomination 3 times in a row, but also having this stunning comeback, changing the party, changing the conservative movement, changing the world. So yeah, that piece of advice there, I think, is very deeply embedded in the personality of President Trump.
And just for the record, I'll never forget when he decided to run. It's in 2015, and he's in, and they asked Melania, he goes, oh, well, if he's going to run, he's going to win. And I'm like, that's interesting. That's nice to be supported. But it's almost as if she goes, no, that's what he does. He's going to win. And I'm not saying he has bankruptcies and he's got failures. The USFL wasn't a positive. He sued the league to take on the NFL, wins the court case, but only gets $1. He doesn't want to bring that up. So it doesn't matter. I mean, if you look at his background, you could see it's not a straight line. And he also cites Theodore Roosevelt, Douglas MacArthur, George Patton, Amelia Earhart, Annie Oakley, and Muhammad Ali as personalities to really build off of. And it's interesting. He just gets up every day. It's like even when he was soldiering through all those court cases, I asked him on the plane when the cases were at their zenith and they were still waiting for his verdict, how you getting through it? He goes, what choice do I have? I'm like, well, that's interesting. What choice do I have? I got to go through it. So I got to go straight ahead. So it's just a fascinating. I'm assuming when people back up and stop being so political, I think people will realize that. And lastly, this. I watched Jake Tapper yesterday because he had the ambassador to England on. So I wanted to see if he was going to go trash the deal. And Jake Tapper tried to bring him there. And he said, you said some bad, the guy you replaced really said some bad things about Trump. And he goes, so did I. He goes, but we have to all calm down and get over it. And we've moved past that. I go, yeah, just admit it.
Good advice.
Yeah. Same thing with J.D. Vance, called him a Nazi. Move on. He ends up vice president. Matt, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Look forward to your next column.
Thanks, Brian.
Let's bring in Mark Halperin now, as insightful politically as anyone in the country. He's got his extremely successful two-way broadcast almost every day. He's a political analyst, best-selling author. Mark, welcome back.
Brian, nice to be back. I hate to correct the host off the top, but it's not almost every day. It's twice every day.
Is it really twice every day? 9
a.m. and 6 p.m., Monday through Friday.
See, in your format, you could really decide when you want to do it, but you are holding yourself to a schedule.
Yeah, well, we could. The reality is there's a lot of differences, right, from TV versus YouTube and other distribution. But some things aren't different. And appointment viewing, we've learned, is pretty important to get people to say, here's when it's on. So we're consistent, but we do breaking news as well. So we'll do special reports, but the regular shows are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern time.
All right, let's start moving through it now. I guess first things first, the president announced his first trade deal with the UK. How do you think it's resonating? Because there were some questions, really some, I guess, discerning questions to the president in the Oval Office, like, hey, is this really that big of a deal? What's your sense?
It's not a final deal, and nobody thought it was going to be. I think you got to be realistic about why it's a positive, and then certainly if it doesn't materialize and get locked in, it's going to be a negative. But in the short term, very positive for the president. First of all, it demonstrates that something which we knew: the markets love it. Now, the markets love also the China talks taking place this weekend in Geneva with Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. But one of the reasons to get an early deal was to calm the markets. The markets have been doing very well this week. Second, it's positive is they want to send some momentum. They want to be able to say, we told you we get deals in these 90 days. Well, here's the first one. And so anything that shows momentum to calm members of Congress and people in the business community, consumers that say, yeah, they're going to be deals that are going to lower these tariffs is a good thing politically for the president and for the country. And then finally, it's a template, right? All the countries wanted to be first. No one really knows exactly outside the inner circle why the UK got to be first. But now India and Japan and South Korea and others are going to say, well, there's one deal. Let's see what we can build off of to get our deal next.
So I talked to Senator Thune this morning, and he was on our couch, and he even mentioned to me, too, is like the tariffs got people in South Dakota nervous. We're an ag state. And there's probably is going to be an ask of about $60 billion to the farmers, like last time, to do some supplementals until we can get some of these deals done, especially with China. Do you expect the Democrats to give them a hard time on that?
I do. And also free market folks. Ken Griffin, one of the most successful business people in this country, is critical of the carve-outs, the special exceptions, because it's crony capitalism, right? It's the government picking winners and losers. There are lots of people who are hurt by tariffs. I talked to a woman this week who does wedding planning in Chicago, and she does custom cocktail napkins. They're made in China. They've gone from like $150 for 500 napkins to twice that. She's not a special interest that's going to get a carve-out exemption for Chinese cocktail napkins for her weddings, and that means she's being discriminated against. So I don't like the carve-outs, but we know that that's just part of trade policy, and so it's unfortunate, but it's going to happen.
So how about this? The president's tactic yesterday and today, the Post, Bloomberg had it 60%, but he also mentioned getting out to 80%. Scott Bessent, you can make your own decision, but when you go to Switzerland to negotiate with the Chinese for the next 2 days, you want to go down to 80% in order to get something in return? Go ahead, your call. Interesting negotiation tactic.
Yeah, I wonder what the founding fathers would say about Donald Trump using Truth Social to start to bandy about different percentages. Donald Trump is a master of this stuff. He knows how to sort of try to calibrate with public statements, including on social media, to get people to feel like there can be progress. And, Senator Cruz has been quite open, some senators more in private, saying to the president, like, if you're using these tariffs as a tool to make the trading position of the United States better around the world, fantastic. If there are things you think they're going to be on permanently and they're going to start raising prices for American consumers, no, people aren't going to be on board for that. So I think the markets will have a very good day, not just in anticipation of the talks in Geneva, but in hearing the president say maybe these tariffs are already going to start coming down, back towards pre-Independence Day levels.
So, Mark, what's your speculation, because I haven't read anything yet, of what the president's big announcement is, that it's going to address a problem that's been out there for a long time?
Yeah.
He wouldn't say something like that if it wasn't substantial.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea?
Well, CBS News says they know what it is. Some people said they thought it was the trade announcement with England. My co-hosts on the morning meeting, Sean Spicer, Dan Turrentine, both said that, well, they thought that was it. CBS says it's an announcement having to do with the cost of prescription drugs. I think that sounds more like what it was. It fits the description in terms of it's on a very important topic and that it's one of the biggest things ever announced. I didn't understand quite from the CBS story what this was, but my sense is that it's that, and that's going to be anticlimactic for people like me who guessed it was peace between Saudi Arabia and Israel. But I'll look to see the details. Maybe it will do something to substantially lower the cost of prescription drugs. And again, not sexy issue for everybody, but if you're an American who's reliant on being able to afford prescription drugs for yourself or for your family, this could be a big deal, as the president said.
So President Biden is making it known he's back. He says he's got a book deal. Some people say it's $30 million for him and Jill. He's got to get it done in a year. So he goes on The View, a place he feels comfortable, and he was asked a very succinct and important question by Alyssa Farah Griffin. Cut 5.
Mr. President, since you left office, there have been a number of books that have come out, deeply sourced from Democratic sources, that claim in your final year there was a dramatic decline in your cognitive abilities. In the final year of your presidency, what is your response to these allegations, or are these sources wrong?
They are wrong. There's nothing to sustain that. And so we went to work and we got it done. And, one of the things that and
Alyssa, one of the things I think is that the people who wrote those books were not in the White House with us. Mm-hmm. And they didn't see how hard Joe worked every single day. Joe worked really hard. I think he was a great president. And if you look at things today...
So you got the spirit. If you want to tell someone that you're cognitively okay, you shouldn't stop mid-sentence, number one. And Jill stepped in, just like rumored to be the case, even at the few cabinet meetings she had. What's your take, Mark?
Well, it's an hour-long interview. They were on almost the entire show. President Biden did some of it by himself, and then former First Lady joined. I mean, it's 11 a.m. That's kind of his sweet spot for being, not showing, full cognitive decline. There were moments that were a little rough, but for the most part, he was there, but not because of cognitive decline, but just because of the desire to spin. He said a bunch of stuff that just wasn't true. And they can continue to say that all that happened was that he had a cold and one bad debate. They can continue to act as if that's the truth. And you don't need an investigative reporting ability to know that that's not the truth. We saw him in public many times exhibiting cognitive decline over many years. So I find it frustrating as a journalist and concerning as a human being that they're still out there trying to sell America on the story that this was a one-off and that he was fine the rest of his presidency, when, again, you don't need inside sources. Right. As I say, you just need a C-SPAN subscription. Which is kind of interesting, Mark, because he said one of the reasons that Kamala Harris lost was because of sexism and racism. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. I don't really think, and you might correct me on this, Trump didn't run against a woman and a minority. He ran against a Democrat. I don't think he was singling out a gender attack. Did you pick that up as a tactic? I mean, I'm sure there were some tweets by people who may have done that, but it's a horrible thing to say about the American people. Yes. Because I mean, he's not saying Trump did these horrible things and they had no effect. It's saying the American people voted in reaction to trying to turn against her. I mean, I'm sure there's some people who won't vote for a woman or a non-white person for president. I'm sure that's the case. But I don't think I'd put that in the top 100 reasons why she lost. What's the sense among Democrats now that he's coming out, did the BBC, did The View? I'm sure he's going to be doing more things. What is that your sense as they try to recalibrate and find out what their effective message is going to be for 26 and 28? I mean, I think there's a sliver of Democrats I talk to who say it's all hands on deck. Everyone needs to be out there with a megaphone opposing Donald Trump and being in the resistance. But the vast majority of Democrats, strategists, elected officials, donors, activists, they don't want to see the Bidens on the stage. They don't want to see them taking up space from other younger Democrats who can be part of the future. They don't want to see the conversation be about, even on The View, where they're sympathetic to him, about the last campaign and about his decisions that he made, about what people knew and when they knew it about his acuity. So I think he's out there in part because this is all he knows, right? For decades, all he knew was being in the spotlight, being sought after for commentary. And I think he's partly out there because he's trying to reignite Biden Inc. and have a way to make money. And I think he's partly out there because he believes Donald Trump is a menace and he wants to talk. But as I said, very few Democrats I talk to think that his voice is one that is valuable for the party right now and trying to figure out the path forward.
Mark, I spent a lot of time looking at the big, beautiful bill today to get ready for the Senator Thune interview. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of friction and a lot of disagreement. The New Yorkers and the ones in the blue states with the high state tax want that state tax deduction as high as 60%, including Mike Lawler. They're never going to get that. And now they're talking about decreasing the amount of cuts to the point where they won't make the tax cuts permanent. I'm hearing about that. And President Trump saying, I'm open to raising the tax bracket. You know, that's a third rail for many conservative Republicans. Is this typical of the disarray behind a big bill? Or do you think this is really troubling if you're Speaker Johnson?
Great. Well, perfectly framed. And you didn't even get to all the issues that are currently dividing them. You did the biggest ones, but there are others. Failure is not an option. If the party didn't pass this bill, it would be a disaster for the party, for the president, for their agenda. So I still think more likely than not they'll pass it. I think what we're missing now is what we call a forcing mechanism, right? These folks like negotiating over tax rates or Medicare, Medicaid cutting or funding. They have no deadline. There's nothing forcing them to sit in the room and say, well, okay, I'm ready to compromise. They need a deadline. And the deadline could be Christmas. It could be the expiration of the tax cuts that President Trump passed in his first term. But the real deadline that's going to be out there soon is the so-called X date, the date at which if the government doesn't raise the debt ceiling, the United States is in a default. Once that date is set, it will focus the minds of these folks. And some of these very tough issues that you laid out on taxes and on spending, they'll have to resolve them. And I think they will. But there's increasing talk that they will fail and that they're going to have to do a deal with the Democrats in order to get the bill done. And that would be a very big disaster for the party. And they'll start to use that as a talking point and to say everybody's going to have to compromise within the Republican family, or we're going to have to turn to Hakeem Jeffries to get this into law. Right.
Is there as much disappointment as it seems for Hakeem Jeffries as a leader? Because it's obviously if Etienne, the former staffer with Nancy Pelosi, if Nancy Pelosi didn't want her to go out there and go after Jeffries, she wouldn't have. I mean, is there people getting upset?
Yeah. So following Nancy Pelosi is a very tough act, right? She's one of the best there ever has been in either party at a very difficult job of being the leader of a House caucus that is very, very diverse in every respect, including ideologically. If Jeffries weren't so well liked, you'd see more of what you cited of one former Pelosi advisor speaking out. He's very well liked. He works very hard. He's likable naturally, but he works very hard to be on the good side of his colleagues. So that point of view that says he's not being tough enough, aggressive enough, ferocious enough and effective enough to counter Donald Trump is something you'll hear privately from a lot of folks, but it's tempered, especially in public, because they like the guy.
Laura Loomer, influence on Trump. I mean, I know Dr. Neshawat, one of the finest people ever. A degree in the Caribbean is not atypical for bad doctors. Get great degrees. A lot of times you got to leave the country to get in. And number two, Mike Waltz. If you want Mike Waltz out, you're the president of the United States. But I hope it's not because of Laura Loomer. Is that what you're hearing?
You mean White House Personnel Director Laura Loomer?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it seems. I hope she's overstating her impact.
Well, we know some things that have not really been disputed. She sat in the Oval Office with Mike Waltz before he was promoted to be the UN ambassador and said to the president, the following people on the National Security Council staff have to go, and he fired them. So she's very influential. Now, she's not in favor of the replacement Surgeon General nominee. So if Casey Means is confirmed, then Loomer will have won one, but then lost one. She's very much opposed. So it's an interesting thing to seemingly let her have her way on the nominee right before the confirmation hearings, but then put it right back and say, well, we're going to replace the one you don't like with someone else you don't like. So we'll have to see. She's not all powerful, but she's influential. When she goes after someone, it hangs in the balance. She doesn't always win, but she's won a lot.
Do you know why? Do you know why she has this influence?
Well, it's interesting because you could say, well, she's got a lot of influence online with MAGA. But we see sometimes she goes after people who have support from other people in MAGA. Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, Don Jr. I I think her influence comes in part because she puts in sharp relief biographical aspects or ideological statements from folks that some people in MAGA don't like, and she whips them up. And for whatever reason, the president in particular, more than anybody who works for him, as I understand it, just says, I don't want that heat. I don't want to have to deal with that. So let's just cut our losses and move on. And it's an extraordinary story, because I don't remember anybody in any previous administration I've covered having Laura Loomer's influence over these personnel decisions.
There's a lot of unprecedented things always with Trump 1 and Trump 2, and here's another. That's why, Mark, is so valuable. Your insight and your contacts have never been greater. Congratulations on everything and on your new podcast.
Thank you, Brian. Good to see you.
Mark Halperin, thank you so much.
I've been a United States Marine, been a Special Forces Green Beret. I never met fear until I came to Ukraine.
Russian forces are closing churches and persecuting Christians.
The soldiers stopped worship service. They arrested me.
They destroyed hundreds church.
Євангельські, особливо церкви.
Russia is torturing and murdering Ukrainian Christians for their faith.
This is good versus evil.
I agree. And that's the name of the documentary, A Faith Under Siege, Russia's Hidden War on Ukraine's Christians. Joining us now, back with us in studio, Steve Moore, not the economist, the former chief of staff for the U.S. House of Representatives and founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project, which raises money to aid Ukrainians, and Anna Shvetsova, the chief operating officer for the Ukraine Freedom Project. Welcome to both of you. Welcome back, I should say.
Yeah, man, always great to be with you.
So first off, what are we going to see in this documentary?
Well, this is one of those stories that's just not getting out. And, there's 2.5 million Christians who are living in occupied Ukraine who can't go to church because Vladimir Putin has shut down every church in occupied Ukraine, not controlled by the Kremlin. And if you have a Bible study in your home, then that's punishable by 20 years.
How do they affect Ukraine?
Pardon me?
Is it in Ukraine?
Yeah, in occupied Ukraine, the Russians. Occupied Ukraine, yeah. So this is the Russians doing this. You hear a bit about Ukraine and Christians, but the real crime here is Vladimir Putin's torture and murder of Ukrainian Christians.
Right. So what could you tell us, Anna, about what I would see and how I would how my security might be hampered as a Christian in that occupied area?
Yeah, Brian. So I grew up 30 miles from the Russian border. I grew up speaking Russian, so I'm one of Ukrainians whom Vladimir Putin came to liberate. And now every day of my life, every minute of it, I devote to giving a voice to those 2.5 million Christians whom Vladimir Putin already liberated and who cannot go to church every Sunday like you and me can go, because they can be imprisoned, they will be tortured, they can be killed. Vladimir Putin killed 47 faith leaders, Christian leaders. There are 630 churches that have been destroyed. And there is not a single Catholic priest left on the occupied Ukraine. People cannot worship God.
What's his problem with Catholics? What's his problem with Christians? Because doesn't he have a Russian Orthodox church?
The reasons why he's persecuting these people, because there is no higher power for them than God and Jesus Christ, and Putin wants people to worship the state, the Kremlin,
like a communist.
Yeah, he doesn't want the competition, So Christians, they have a God, they have someone they follow. It's Jesus, and Putin does not want the competition.
So. Why did you want to do this documentary? To explain to people that it's bad in Ukraine, but it's really bad for Christians?
Yeah. Well, again, there's some stories that we as conservatives know just don't get out. You don't know why. But, this is a story of torture and persecution that's in a magnitude that is not like anything since the Soviet Union.
So I want you to hear a little bit more. Cut 43.
Sure.
Why does Russia hate evangelical Christians?
They're afraid. Our churches never want to be under government, under communistic party, under KGB, under dictatorship regime. Russia persecute evangelicals because we have just one leader, it's Jesus Christ.
And they don't want to hear that, right?
Yeah. And
so what do you say to people who say in your area you speak Russian and he's helping you by bringing you back to Russia where you belong, that you should never have been away from Russia?
We don't want to be with Russia. We have more in common. We have more values in common with America than with Russia and any other country. We value freedom more than anything else, including freedom of religion. Ukraine has the biggest freedom of religion in Europe. And it's separate from the state, and people can practice any religion they want in Ukraine. This is what we want to keep. Right. And Russia will never allow this.
When did you realize this, Steve Moore?
Well, I went to Ukraine on day 5 of the war to help because I don't like bullies, and Putin is a bully, and so I was doing humanitarian aid work, and I met a guy who is a Christian. He was taking people out of occupied Luhansk in 2014, and the Russians grabbed him, pulled him out of his car, took him to the basement, which is a euphemism for torture. Mm-hmm. And they tortured him for 25 days, including one day when the Russian soldiers were tasing him with electricity, and a Russian Orthodox priest was standing over him, trying to cast demons out of him for being an evangelical Christian. I found this mind-blowing and something that nobody knew about. And then I heard other people say that Zelensky's persecuting Christians, and I live in Kyiv.
We do hear that here.
Yeah, well, it's nonsense, and I'll tell you why. There's the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. It's a branch of the Russian Orthodox Church. The Russian Orthodox Church is a working arm of the Kremlin. The Russian Orthodox Church has declared a holy war on Ukraine and the West. Now, I don't know what happened to your church last Sunday, but mine, nobody declared a holy war. And so the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is a branch of the Russian Orthodox Church, and there's some really bad actors in there who are on trial for doing things like priests that have been targeting Russian artillery or housing Russian soldiers. And so it's a national security threat. It has nothing to do with religion.
So that's the perception that people keep saying, well, Zelensky is shutting down churches. Your thoughts?
No, he doesn't shut down the churches. So we want to separate. We have our independent church, which we got in 2018 only. And we have Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Most of people switched to this Ukrainian church.
Gotcha.
But those priests who report to Kremlin, they're committing crimes. They're national security threat, as Steven said. And the government gave them a warning to cut ties with Moscow, and they didn't do it. They didn't do any official steps to cut ties with Moscow. This is the only thing that we wanted them to do.
Right. So that's a huge issue. So what's the war like for you and your family?
They still live there 30 miles from the Russian border. The city was under siege for 6 weeks. It was really tough, but it didn't surrender. And now it's the city of heroes, as they call it in Ukraine, because they didn't
And that city is?
It's...
Name it. What is it?
It's in Sumy region.
Yeah, we don't want to...
For security.
You don't?
Yeah, it's in Sumy region. It's between Sumy and Kharkiv. And the Iranian Shahed drones are flying over their roofs every night on their way to Kyiv, but people adjust to everything. They continue living their lives, growing vegetables. They have a big garden,
But Steve, they keep saying that they're trying to denazify Ukraine. That's what Vladimir Putin said yesterday at his big parade.
Yes. That's stunning, right? So Ukraine has a Jewish president. 70-something% of the people voted for him. They had a Jewish prime minister at one time. They've got a Muslim defense minister. So that's just utter nonsense. What that belief is, if anyone believes it in America, is that's a result of about $1.6 billion of the Russian propaganda that they're spending worldwide. And so Vladimir Putin is not a man of faith. He's not a Christian leader. He's not defending Christendom. He is killing families. He is killing Christians. Evangelical
stealing children.
Stealing children. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure that's a family value. There's nearly 20,000 children that the Ukrainian government has identified as being trafficked out of Ukraine by the Russians. And that's just a drop in the bucket because that's just the ones that I've identified. There's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Here's General Jack Keane on the negotiations so far. Cut 40.
Their concessions are completely unreasonable. They want Zelensky out of power. They want the Constitution to change. They want to demilitarize Ukraine's military, and they want to get territory that they're not occupying. All of that is very tough, and that's what the ploy here is, to try to get those concessions or some of them before some kind of a peace agreement. But in terms of Putin and where you started from, he's playing hardball here, and I really think it's about time for the administration to take the gloves off and start dealing with him very toughly in terms of crippling sanctions and increased military assistance to Ukraine.
I guess you agree with that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. What would be the biggest beneficiary? What do you think? Where are they getting their weapons? The Russians, are they making them themselves? Are they getting from Iran, from China?
They purchased
about $4 billion of Iranian drones. So Iranians have a suicide drone, kamikaze drone called a Shahed, and they're using them against Israel. But they've sent about 15,000 of these things to Russia. Russia then sends them past our apartment building in Kyiv and hits civilian targets. And they're using that data to improve these drones and improve Iran's weapons so they can be used against Israel.
Right. But I understand Ukraine is starting to manufacture their own drones, making their own drones, like their own weapons, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, people are looking for the benefit of the U.S. investment in this war. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of it. There's three countries that are leading the world in drone warfare. It's Russia, China, and Ukraine, and Iran. So there's four. And you'll notice that only one of those guys is on our side, and we don't have the type of weapons that are as effective as the Ukrainian weapons. So the technology transfer we're getting from this war and learning how our adversaries use drones is incalculable.
How is the U.S. viewed right now over there, Anna?
We love America. We have American friends who were coming to Ukraine after the situation in Oval Office, and they were asking us this question, like, what is the perception? Is it safe to come to Ukraine? Americans are heroes, regardless of what politicians are doing. Like normal people, Americans, they will be welcomed. We thank you every time we see any American in Ukraine for coming there, for being with us, for supporting us. It means a lot to us.
What about seeing St. Peter's Basilica, Zelensky and Trump one-on-one? What did that do for the morale of the Ukrainians?
It feels great. America is our biggest ally in this war. We want, without America, my parents would not be alive now. We might not have the country by now. So, have you seen our government building good relations with America again?
Right.
It feels good, and the morale is much higher now.
And Steve, I heard good things came out of that meeting, and now they're talking regularly, Zelensky and Trump.
Yeah, that is really great news. And I think President Trump has been super patient with Putin, and I think he's working really hard. But, there's carrots and sticks in negotiations, and Putin is just being disrespectful to President Trump. And
there's no question. And he's embarrassing him, and Trump knows that. That's the worst thing you could do to him.
Oh, yeah. That's the best way to make a friend out of Zelensky is to have Putin, treat him like he's treating President Trump. And so
here's what General Keane said about Ukraine, Cup 41.
Ukraine, on the other hand, has totally agreed to a comprehensive ceasefire, stop in place the territory that's being occupied, separate the forces. They've agreed to all of that. And I think that's very reasonable on their part. The good news, too, this week, obviously, is the mineral deal that was signed and the political and economic and also security implications that generational deal has for Ukraine.
Wow. So go out and check out the documentary from Anna and Steve. It's called Faith Under Siege, Russia's Hidden War on Ukraine's Christians. Is there a sense, Anna, before I let you go, that this could be coming to an end soon, one way or another? Do people want to? Would there be a willingness to stop, even if you don't get your land back?
There is mistake that people think that like Ukrainians want to fight. We don't want to fight. We just don't want Russians to kill us. And we have to defend ourselves. If there is a way to stop this war without us fighting in any way so that Putin didn't like just pause the war, took 2 years to regroup and didn't invade again, we will be open to do this. But we need to remember that like this is not the war over territories. There are 3.5 million people under occupation. 2.5 million of them are Christians who can die any minute for praising God. And there are more than 20,000 children who were abducted, and we want them back. So this is not about territories. This is about people.
I hear you. And Steve, final thought?
Yeah, I think that we're at a pivot point. I think Trump is talking about Putin asking for too much. J.D. Vance, who has always been very adamantly against Ukraine, is saying that Putin wants too much. And I think our film right now is an opportunity for your audience and American believers to understand what's at stake. And it's not a war over territory. It's a spiritual war. You know, this is Russia attacking Ukraine's Christians. There's a holy war being declared on this.
Where do we get this documentary?
Well, so you can go to faithundersiege.com. It's going to be widely distributed a little bit later this month, and you will hear about it soon.
It will air on CBN.
You can say, okay, CBN is fine. Christian Broadcasting.
Yeah, CBN tomorrow, and they're going to show it 6 times over the weekend.
Nice.
So it's great. We got a really solid group of partners, and hopefully we can show it on Fox sometime.
Absolutely. Steve Moore, Anna Shvetsova, thanks so much for joining us. Congratulations on Faith Under Siege.
An exciting day for Catholics and for America. We have a new pope. And against all odds, he is one of us, an American pope. The Pope Mobile is now a Ford F-250 with truck nuts.
The new pope actually graduated from Villanova University. It's wild that we have a pope who might have done a keg stand outside an Eagles game. Isn't that wild? Might have.
It's not just that Leo is an American. He was born in Chicago. This means officially I can no longer imitate the Pope using an Italian accent. From now on, the Pope's going to sound like this. Hey there, it's your buddy Leo. The deep dish papa. Just talk to God, and not even he can help the White Sox. Sorry. First order of business, I will be canonizing Michael Jordan. Now, let's end by saying, da prayers.
Pretty funny. That is a little of some of the remarks from the stunning news that the Pope is American, even though he spent considerable time in Peru, born in Chicago, went to Villanova, cardinal for 2 years, and now he's Pope. Gianno Caldwell, Fox News political analyst, he's going to his brother's featured on America is Most Wanted in terms of trying to find his murderer. It's going to be airing on Fox TV on Monday. But Gianno, first the fun stuff. A Pope from Chicago. Who would have thought?
Yeah, I wouldn't have saw that on my bingo card for 2025 at all. But certainly this is going to be different. And I guess when Donald Trump said America first, this is what he meant.
Do you think Trump deserves credit for this?
No, I don't. I'm making a joke.
Right. But I mean, it's pretty big. I mean, what is it like in Chad? They take pride in this?
No, yeah, of course. I think anywhere around the country, people are taking pride that not only he's from Chicago, but he's an American. So, yeah, this is something that I think many folks would see, maybe a little bit of American values seeping into the Catholic Church. I'm told from what I've at least read that he's more of a conservative in terms of his theology, which I hope is the case because it seemed like the Catholic Church through the last pope kind of took a left turn there. So maybe things will be back on track and more about Bible than it is about some of these social movements.
Yeah, I do know too. Pope Leo doesn't seem to be a big Trump fan. He retweeted some negativity towards Trump and told, I guess, on one occasion that the vice president was wrong about how something he posted. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I did not know cardinals were tweeting or taking on people. I could see posting, but I didn't think sparring. This is just, it could be a new age.
No, and I mean it's been a new age since Trump went down that escalator. Things in 2015, things have certainly been changing. It's kind of upside down how people respond to politics these days. That's not something I would want my pope necessarily doing. I wouldn't want people getting involved in political discussions, or even as a priest, I wouldn't want that. It should be about love. It should be about charity. It should be about faith in God, faith in Christ. Those are some of the measurements biblical that I would rather see them doing, but here we go. Let's see if with this new platform if he changes his tune.
Right. Let's see what happens. I also think it's interesting that the Cubs try to take ownership of him, but he's a White Sox fan. That's a big deal. There's a big difference, right?
Very big. In the city of Chicago, it is a major difference. People oftentimes don't know it, but since both teams often lose, it's just like, okay, I'm a Chicagoan. I'll support whatever Chicago team wins.
Okay. So, Gianno, let's talk about what America's Most Wanted. They're going to feature the crime that took your brother's life. And
Yes.
they're gonna try to find out who this killer is. Could you tell me about it?
Yes. On June 24th, 2022, my life changed forever when my innocent teenage baby brother Christian was murdered in Chicago on the South Side. And I'm honored that John Walsh and Callahan, his son, have taken on this case because John Walsh is a crime fighter. He's a crime fighter's crime fighter. He's brought over 1,200 fugitives, got them arrested, taken them off the streets. This is somebody who has a major light that has been going on for decades that has often solved cases. So with the kind of visibility that I'll get from America's Most Wanted in homes across the country, of course, on Fox Local this coming Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Check your local listings for where it may air in your city. I feel a bit of hope that we can get this thing solved. I feel hope that we have a Trump administration with people like Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, who I've recently, Pam Bondi, when I started the Caldwell Institute for Public Safety last year, which we're going after George Soros back and funded prosecutors. Go to caldwellinstitute.org and support our efforts there. But Pam was one of the first people that joined my advisory board during that time. Now she's Attorney General. So I got that voice too. So we got those resources. So we're putting this all together and hoping that my family receives justice for an injustice that happened back in June 24th, 2022. We need to see something happen here.
Well, let me ask you, do you have some solid leads? Do you have directions that you didn't have maybe 6 months ago or even 2 months ago?
No, not that we didn't have 6 months ago or 2 months ago. So this is going to be a fairly new process for us. What we do know, though, is there was an individual who was found with the gun on him, the murder weapon on him. He was arrested. The FBI got involved maybe 1 or 2 months after that. And apparently they wanted him for other things as well. But at that point, we were looking to get them to look at my brother's case. No one at the FBI will call me back. I called them multiple times. They wouldn't call me back. I got on television and said, hey, I want somebody to call me. I had FBI agents, former ones called current ones, still no callbacks. It wasn't until I went to Congress. I literally had to lobby multiple committee chairmen in Congress to get them to write a letter to the FBI director asking them to get involved. And when that happened, I got a call from the special agent in charge of the Chicago field office telling me he was on it. We were having regular calls. They put together a team, but this guy got promoted and he went on and the call stopped. So with this new administration and this new moment of opportunity, this life from John Walsh and America's Most Wanted team, I'm hopeful that we can get the momentum and movement going again.
Here's a cut from America's Most Wanted, cut 53.
Christian Beeman was a high school senior with dreams of college and a bright future ahead of him. But in an instant, it was gone. The 18-year-old was outside a house after a party around 2 a.m. when a black SUV pulled up. Gunman jumped out and opened fire. 50 shots rang out. 2 people were wounded, but Christian was hit multiple times and died at the scene.
Wow. So that's a little of what's going to air on America's Most Wanted. It'll be Monday, this Monday coming up at 9 o'clock. So it was clearly, Gianno, targeted, correct? Or is they just looking to kill?
No, so
anybody?
he wasn't the target. So one of the theories we've heard, and I've talked to the police and they said they heard it as well, is there was a fight between 2 individuals months prior. Somebody recorded the fight, put it on Facebook. The guy who who got beat up pretty badly from this two-man fight was after the guy who put the video on Facebook. They took they tried to kill the guy who put the video on Facebook. He runs off to Los Angeles, comes back 6 months later thinking the coast is clear. They see him out. Apparently my brother's standing next to him and other people, and they want to kill this particular guy, but they shoot everyone.
Understood. Here's a little more. Cut 54.
Christian Beeman's murder made national news. But for Gianno Caldwell, this wasn't just a headline.
If I wasn't on national television, people probably wouldn't care.
My family has forever been shattered, and so many families across the United States are dealing with very similar tragedies. It is time for us to speak out and hold criminals accountable to ensure that Krishna's legacy means something.
So, are you happy with the way the piece came out?
I haven't seen the piece. Actually, the audio you just ran for me was the first I heard of it. So thank you for sharing that. But I'm pretty sure that the caliber and character and integrity of the show, the integrity of John Walsh, the integrity of Callahan, it will be superb, and they will cover this with everything they have. John Walsh has become a friend of mine. I love him. I consider him a big brother and a mentor in this space, and he's someone who's been extraordinarily helpful to me. I had an event at Mar-a-Lago back in February. It was our first event for the Caldwell Institute for Public Safety, again at caldwellinstitute.org. He was our keynote speaker. We had hundreds of people in the big ballroom, Trump's big ballroom at Mar-a-Lago, and I was very grateful that he was able to come out, bring his talents, and talk to people who are interested in justice, who are interested in fighting back against these progressives who are endangering the lives of everyone within their jurisdictions. These George Soros-funded progressive district attorneys are creating harm for families all over the country. My family paid the price. I'm hopeful that our efforts at the Caldwell Institute for Public Safety ensures that other families don't have to pay that same price.
All right, so it's America's Most Wanted. See it Monday, and it's going to air after that on Fox Nation, Monday at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. On a much lesser note, politics. Just want to get your take on Joe Biden, his view of why Kamala Harris lost, and really is his view on America, I guess. Cut 3.
Why do you think the vice president lost, and were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised, not because I didn't think the vice president's the most qualified person to be president, and she is. I wasn't surprised because they went the route of the sexist route, the whole route. I mean, this is a woman, she's this, she's that. I mean, it really, I've never seen quite as successful and a consistent campaign undercutting the notion that a woman couldn't lead the country, and a woman of mixed race.
Do you think the fact that she's a woman of mixed race and a woman is the reason she lost?
No, but that's not the reason. But them playing on that is a part of the reason why people can disqualify her candidacy. The reason she lost is because she was a vice president that didn't do her job. She was the border czar. Immigration was the major issue in the country for everyone, not just conservatives, but Democrats, independents, everyone believed that this was a major issue. The other issue was the economy. She got on that same view, sat and said, I wouldn't do anything different than Joe Biden. She said Bidenomics was working. She said that all the failed policies that Joe Biden either ran on or tried to implement as president was superb. That's why she lost. People were in fear for crime. They were in economic uncertainty. The immigration issue was a major, major factor. Biological men or boys in women's sports, that was another issue. And Donald Trump talked about the issues from a real place. Even though the mainstream media didn't like it, it resonated with Americans all over the country. That is the reason she lost. It has nothing to do with her mixed race. It has nothing to do with her being a woman.
It just, to me, it damages the whole thing. And if you really view our country as somebody who's unwilling to elect a woman or a woman of color, why don't say that you have pride in America? Because you don't. You can't have it both ways. Gianno, so glad you're telling the story. I hope you get some answers with the power of this show and then Fox Nation after. I assume this is your best chance yet to find out who was really responsible.
Well, thank you so much. And I encourage the listeners and audience to follow me at Gianno Caldwell on social media. And again, check out caldwellinstitute.org. We got to keep the work going. It started with my brother, but it doesn't end with him. There's a lot of people out there that need support and help and to fight back against these George Soros-funded prosecutors.
All right.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, go get him, Gianno.